Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another edition of CFB Graphs Quick Hits Podcast. I'm here with Jamie Plunkett. I'm Parker Fleming, and we are back this week talking through the board, talking through some slates of games, and just chatting about football. We'll use betting lines as kind of a guiding principle here, but remember, these are just paper trades. We were just talking hypothetically, putting some pen on paper, and discussing some matchups. Jamie, how are you today?
I'm mourning the college basketball loss of Tony Bennett a little bit today.
I
Random
noticed I
retirement
noticed the
20
tag.
minutes 20 minutes before, or 20 days before the season starts. Like what are we doing, Tony? My goodness.
Yeah, it's sad that my initial thought was like, one, I hope he's okay. I hope it's, health related stuff.
Sure.
Like we've seen that happen to coaches. And then two, pending him being okay, like I hope it's not a scandal.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that always struck me as like just taking the Jay Wright route and saying, you know what, I think I'm good, and just dipping from the sport.
Yeah.
Timing is a little suspicious. Hopefully, you're right, and there is no ulterior get out in front of bad things motive here. So
Yeah. Well, and like spinning it positively, I can see a guy that wants to end on his own terms saying, let me run camp, let me do the schedule, let me set it up for a really good situation, and then hand it off to my right hand man and then
Yes.
give him the best shot at keeping the
Yeah.
job, retaining the job, and keeping things rolling. So hopefully I'm going to operate under the assumption that that's what's going on. And hopefully that bears out. But even as college basketball season is looming, one, shout out to people who do college basketball, man. Like, that is such a grind. There's 300 teams, there's games all the time, and people are just absolutely insane about that. I'm not built for it. I can't do it. I can barely care about college basketball, but a lot of fun. We do have, Jamie, a full week 8 of games here for college football. That should be a lot of fun. A couple premier matchups, a couple off the radar, really interesting ones. And I know that I'm excited to talk about a couple of these. Let's go ahead, and I think I'm going to ask you to pull up CFB or NCAAinsiders.com, which is where CFB Graphs 2.0 lives. We've got, I think this is an improvement from last week. Notice we've got the logo for the pick there as well, which is nice. And I do believe that if you go to the matchups, you should be able to click neutral site. I don't think that's deployed yet. Okay, spoiler alert, that's going to come up soon. But we're getting where you can select neutral site or home and away for the matchups as well. Jamie, will you do me a favor as you're sharing, because my computer is being difficult? Will you control plus and just zoom in a tiny bit? I think that aesthetically makes the spacing on the previews a little bit better there.
Yeah.
Some fun games during the week that were varying levels of actual football. That Kennesaw State Middle Tennessee game was an affront to taste and decency. It was terrible and beautiful. I don't know if you caught any of that, but man, it was something.
I avoided it. I spent some time watching New Mexico State take down Louisiana Tech. That was a very fun football game. I had on BetStamp New Mexico plus 11.5, so that was a very nice little win for me. Less nice of a win, or less nice of a loss, was FIU going down to UTEP though yesterday.
Yeah,
and
good
interesting football game there.
Good on FIU, man, for pulling that one out. I was a little preoccupied. Western Kentucky versus Sam Houston was leaps and bounds in quality above kind of everything else we had in the midweek slate. So I was keyed in on that and was disappointed in fan favorite, country favorite Sam Houston State there and what they weren't able to do. Obviously, Gunnar Watson goes out at halftime and kind of changes the gravity, but they weren't doing great before he went out. And I ended up, Jamie, as one does, going down a deep dive of CUSA rosters and looking at who's coming back next year to see who's building. And so kind of fun. I did something a little rambunctious this week because I couldn't sleep on Sunday night. I logged every single prediction from my model in BetStamp this week. I think I crashed the app 4 times.
Is that why my app wouldn't load earlier this week? Is because you were on there horsing around?
I think I was single-handedly responsible for overloading the server capacity of BetStamp. But just wanted to, I track that week to week, but I don't really mess with units or anything. So I thought it'd be interesting to be like, okay, what's the actual, I know what the average against the spread record is. What's the average return on this, which is something easily calculated. I just am lazy, so I haven't done that. But so I have a ton of volume in BetStamp this week just because I was tracking everything. And so we'll fire on a lot of these today. JB, do you have a game that you want to start?
Let's start here. Let's start Durham, North Carolina, Duke, and Florida State. This is an interesting one because this is one of the few times Duke has ever been straight up favored in this matchup. And Parker, here's a fun fact for you. Do you know what Duke's record against Florida State is?
It has to be like over 29, right?
0 for 20. 0 and 20. And this might be the year that they actually get it done. And it doesn't really matter to me how bad Florida State is in a particular season. If you're losing to Duke, bad things are happening.
Yeah, I think it's also just like you want to think about a single number that kind of defines where your program is. The betting underdog at Duke is just never a good benchmark for you to clear, I think. Yeah. Interesting one here. I do have Duke. The numbers kind of backing it up. Obviously, Florida State has some malaise here. And overall, Florida State, any way you cut it, has just not been great. 118th on offense. The defense, even with the vaunted defensive line that received so much preseason hype, is 100th overall. Duke is much more interesting. That Manny Diaz defense does look to be living up to his reputation. 30th in EPA per rush, 12th in EPA per dropback, 21st overall. The offense leaves something to be desired with Malik Murphy, and the weapons, or maybe the lack of weapons there, and kind of the consistency. They can run okay, but that passing game is not great. Opportunity for them to capitalize here against Duke. What are you thinking on this game? Or against Florida State? What are you thinking on this game?
I'm on Duke -3 in this game. I like it. The thing about Googling Duke's schedule is that it always pulls up the basketball team first, which is super annoying. So I'm looking at them beating Louisville 85-56, and I'm like, that's not right at all. But if I go and I look at their schedule really quickly for football, what I'm noticing here, Parker, is that their competition level hasn't been the highest that we've seen really at all this year. They have a win over Elon. They beat Northwestern, UConn, Middle Tennessee State. They did have the nice comeback against North Carolina. North Carolina's kind of reeling right now. And then they lost last week to Georgia Tech, which I thought was probably the best team they've faced to date. I don't want to do any kind of transitive work here. Obviously, Georgia Tech beat Florida State in week 0. I don't think that has any bearing on this football game, but I will be interested to see how Duke fares against a team that, from a talent composite perspective, is probably the first team that is legitimately more talented than they are, top to bottom on the roster. So despite the records, despite the spread, despite all of the statistics, that's the thing that I'm most interested in this football game, is how does Duke fare when the talent is clearly swinging in the other direction.
Yeah, because you've got to imagine if anyone, so many college football fans want to look at their team and say, all right, this is the week we're going to pick ourselves up off the mat. This is the week we're going to lock in. And, there's been some nonsense, but we can finish strong. Not many of them have the war chest of talent that Florida State does. And you feel like if Florida State can get the motivation alignment correct, they should be able to just, run over some people. Obviously, they're making the switch at have made the switch at quarterback to Brock Glenn, feeling good about their future with that, and do have some legitimate guys up and down the roster. This seems like an opportunity for a turning point, but the numbers do agree that Duke looks like a much superior team at this point.
Absolutely, and yeah, you're right. Malik Murphy's struggled at times this year. We'll see. That secondary is not very good for Florida State. There might be some opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of an equally get right game for Duke's offense to play around us a little bit, which again is a sad state of the program. I like that one a whole lot. Let's go Friday night. I'd love to talk about Oklahoma State and the new Alan Bowman-less Oklahoma State Cowboys who have
Garrett Rangel
fallen on hard times, I think is how I would say Oklahoma State. It does seem like this roster that had so much experience was. We wondered before the season, is the amount of experience that's frankly unprecedented just in terms of the age of all of their players, let alone the actual experience, is that going to kind of trump what we see to be a talent ceiling? And I think two things are really biting Oklahoma State. One, the experience in and of itself is not really translating to winning football games.
Yes.
And two, the defense does not seem to be working. They're 69th in EPA per rush, 88th in EPA per dropback. Jamie, 123rd in echo rate allowed. Some of this early in the season, I was convinced was going to be a little bit of, look worse at the numbers, but actually do better, because last season they were just giving up these absurd explosive touchdowns. I think we're past the point of saying, oh, okay, they're tackling those touchdowns and they're allowing opponents to stall out in their own territory. I think we're seeing a tiny bit of that, but I do think we're just seeing this defense is not very ferocious. I have BYU winning this handily. The night advantage at Provo is undeniable. They're 14th in EPA per play on defense. The offense is only 50th with a pretty big balance towards rushing overall. They also need turnovers. First-time starter, night game Provo, I think they might be able to generate some turnovers here. I
Yeah,
think that they're going to
yeah.
take Oklahoma State. So I'm actually on BYU this week. I do think that this is an opportunity for them to notch another win under their belt and continue putting together what is a hilarious but impressive resume.
Really, truly, it is. I'm also on BYU -9.5 on BetStamp. BetMGM is the one that's offering -9.5 right now. Pretty good odds there. Again, just a paper trade. But interesting thing about Oklahoma State, Parker, is that the run issues that we're seeing this year actually date back to about midway through last season. So if you go and you look, Oklahoma State in the first 3 games of 2023 averaged about 3.4 yards per carry. Those next 3 games, Ollie Gordon went crazy. He was averaging about 6.5 yards a carry. Then the last 6 games of last season for Oklahoma State, they were back to 3.5 yards a carry. So something changed along the way. Defenses started to figure it out. He was overcoming that with volume, really, last season. He's not able to overcome it with volume this year because the offensive line has regressed so much. His yards before contact this year is less than 1. And so you're not, no matter how many times you feed a really capable running back, if he's getting a hit less than a yard past the line of scrimmage, he's not going to be as effective as you need him to be. And again, like you said, now first game quarterback starter Garrett Rangel going on the road at Provo at night. It's just a tough scene for this Oklahoma State offense, and I don't think it gets better this week.
Yeah, definitely not a great spot for them. I do wonder to what extent running backs in college have a certain, I don't know, think of it like a tire, like tread on a tire that you can use, and whether last season, Oklahoma State got everything out of Ollie Gordon that they were going to be able to get out of him. This season certainly does look like, he might, a little bit of shine off of Gordon. I think draft stock and everything is down, but also just game-to-game efficiency is down, and the offensive line is certainly a culprit in that. Now, Oklahoma State has some injuries, but who isn't injured at this point? So I'm riding with BYU by more than a touchdown here.
Absolutely. Jake Retzlaff, incredible story. Saw a little bit of a bio on him last week. Just really impressive stuff from BYU so far this year.
Yeah.
All right, Parker, let's go to a game that I'm looking forward to as we continue on our Big 12 trend here. Let's talk a little Arizona State Cincinnati, because the numbers aren't going to be talking about one of the interesting storylines in this one, and that's the fact that backup quarterback Jeff Sims is going to be in for Arizona State. The former Nebraska player who struggled mightily to do pretty much anything with the Huskers last year is now taking the reins of this offense with Arizona State. Obviously, Cam Scadaboo, I believe most rushing yards in the country right now, or second behind Ashton Genty. Incredible runner. Arizona State, they've made that their identity this year to run the football. But defensively, I think this Cincinnati defense might have an answer to Arizona State's rushing offense.
Yeah, especially without having the kind of comfort and flexibility that Levitt gives you. By the way, I was shocked that Levitt came back into the game at all. Jamie,
yes,
that hit, I think I texted you as that happened, because that was late Friday night, if I recall correctly, and said, oh my God, there goes Sam Levitt's spleen. Yes. Because you could almost see the direct point of impact.
Yeah.
That had to hurt so bad, and clearly he has a rib injury, and adrenaline and some smelling salts can get you a long way through getting the game. But I was not surprised to see him out this week, just because that was such a violent hit and a violent collision. They are 15th in EPA per rush, but match up very poorly with the Cincinnati defense, who is 21st in EPA per rush, but 78th in EPA per dropback. So opportunities to exploit the Cincinnati secondary, but it does not look like Arizona State is super well poised to take advantage of them. We wonder what the focused attention on the run game will do with Jeff Sims in there, will do to Cam Scadaboo's efficiency overall. Jamie, I want to throw something at you and just see your visceral reaction to this. Okay. Cincinnati's offense is good. Brennan Sorsby looks fine. They're 39th in EPA per rush, 30th in EPA per dropback. Really, doing fine on early downs, 52nd overall, but they're 11th on third and fourth down conversions, extending those drives, and doing themselves a lot of favors, being 6th overall with 5 yards of net field position. I am first and foremost one of the biggest downers on Cincinnati and where they were as a program, and it looks like the vision is starting to come into focus. Of just playing a consistent brand of football that maybe is decidedly unsexy, but is certainly geared towards success.
It truly is. I think one of the things that they've done really, really well this year is they haven't turned the ball over a lot. And when you protect the football, when you execute, when you're disciplined, that puts you in a good position to win some football games. They've won some really close ones, right? Like they haven't really beaten the brakes off of anybody yet. And their losses were even close. I mean, their loss in Lubbock, they're a missed field goal away from sending that thing to overtime, and we're probably talking about 5-1 Cincinnati at this point. So, really impressive team so far, and I'm looking forward. To this matchup. Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati lost to Tech by a field goal. They lost to Pitt by 1. They blew a huge lead in the second half of that game against Pitt.
Yeah, and Sorsby went out right with
Yep.
at Pitt, and that was the whole deal. Is they were up, and then he went out, and then it turned on its head there. Yeah.
Yeah, and what we saw from the Cincinnati team this past weekend as well was that they are capable against a run-heavy offense of handling their business, right? They held UCF, who also started a backup quarterback, to just 13 points and not a lot of success on the ground. So I am on Cincinnati -2.5 in this football game. I would feel good even if it moved to 3.5 or 4. I really like Cincinnati, especially just because of the quarterback situation for Arizona State right now.
Some closing line value potentially for you. Cincinnati is -5 for ESPN Bet right now. So,
oh my gosh,
impressive. It's moving that direction, and I think people are agreeing. Jamie, speaking of storylines, speaking of fun, interesting games, let's talk about Coach Beamer going back to Oklahoma.
Let's do it. Let's see where are they at. There they are. All right.
I think that this one, we'll get into the numbers. I think this one's simple for me and why I'm going to back South Carolina here. Two things for me. One, Beamer comes home. You've got the narrative. We saw Heupel do it and walk in and kind of say, "Hey, we're gonna win this game. My players are gonna give me a little something extra." Two, South Carolina is third in pass rush grade at PFF. Oklahoma is 98th in pass blocking grade. For an offense that does not have a lot going for it, it looks like things could only get worse against South Carolina here. And that disruptive front really, really might stretch this Oklahoma offense. I think the Oklahoma defense is good. And it's exactly what we expect out of Brent Venables, but there are diminishing returns to your defense if your offense is this bad overall. I do think they're much more talented and much more I'll say consistent on defense in terms of not allowing those big explosive plays that South Carolina has relied on with Lenore Sellers at quarterback, but especially their efficiency against the rush, 7th overall compared to South Carolina's offense, 44th. I do think Oklahoma will prevent South Carolina from scoring consistently here, but I don't see any reason why South Carolina is not amped up to play this game, doesn't absolutely dominate on the defensive front, and make this a very, very annoying and hard-fought win for Oklahoma.
Yeah, 19 sacks already for South Carolina this year. Just an incredibly impressive number. 7.5 from Kyle Kennard, 3.5 from freshman Dylan Stewart, who maybe won't get a 15-yard gun celebration penalty this week.
Yeah.
Look, I like South Carolina a lot. They took a talented Bama team to the wire. Probably could have come away with the win last week if they had a few more just execution situations where they executed a little bit better last week. I'm with you. I'm on SC +2. I don't know if I've got the guts to do money line quite yet, but when it's that close, I might jump on it a little bit closer to game time. Oklahoma's got to figure out their quarterback situation. Are you going to redshirt Jackson Arnold? Are you sticking with the freshman? Like what's really going on there? Because offensively, you've got to get some situations resolved, or things just aren't going to get better this year.
I know a couple programs in the immediate vicinity who have their eyes on Jackson Arnold already. You got to figure out what you want to do in there. And I think it's, Oklahoma there just goes to show that not many programs are a quarterback away from dramatically changing their fortune. And, it's not always like, hey, play the backup. I think the backup quarterback is everyone's favorite player. I think you've said that before. TCU's had plenty of examples of that. It's not always as easy as play the other guy and you're going to be excellent there. But Hawkins is very, very fun, obviously very unpolished. And I think this pass rush will be disruptive enough to really make this thing uncomfortable.
I agree. Parker, let's go to a game that I'm really looking forward to. Not Alabama, Tennessee. Where did it go?
It'll be fun. Toledo, Northern Illinois.
Absolutely, you nailed it. Where did it go? I'm
I
failing at
do
driving.
Control F. I feel like this is a good exercise in user experience.
Here
I
we
need to
go.
figure out a way where you can like find or sort by conference or something.
That might be helpful just to be able to pull up all of the Big Ten or the Big
Yeah.
12 at a single time. I think that would be really great. Yes, Nebraska and Indiana. Kurt Signetti, Google him, folks, because he is an excellent head coach and he's turned Indiana around pretty quickly. Look at that offensive success rate, Parker. Look at it. Number one in the country. Super impressive offensively for Indiana so far this year. This is going to be one of the better defenses that they've faced. It's probably the best defensive line that they've seen so far. Really interested in that matchup to see if Nebraska can disrupt this Indiana offense. And then conversely, defensively, Indiana hasn't faced a ton of really talented offenses, and I'm wondering which Dylan Raiola we get. Because if we get a Dylan Raiola that's effective, that makes the right decision, that's showing progress and growth during his freshman year, I think this could be a really, really fun football game and a close one down to the wire.
Yeah. Shout out one. I can't let you mention Nebraska's defensive line without shouting Nash Hutchmacher, the lineman who filled in on the wrestling team last year and was just a joy to watch. Was really great. This is one of my favorite stats from the offseason. Nebraska's offense was worth negative 29 expected points added in the passing game last season, all season,
Oof.
negative 29 points all season. And all they needed to improve was a quarterback to be normal bad. And we knew we were going to get this up and down with Dylan Raiola. We knew that we were going to have moments where, okay, he's good, but he's unpolished. He's a freshman. He's going to grow into it. Their defense has actually regressed a little bit in terms of explosives that they've allowed. They're 27th in EPA per play, but this offense is a little bit better than normal bad. They're 57th overall, which is leaps and bounds above where they were last year. And Jamie, even as their play-to-play efficiency isn't great, 58th in the rush, 48th in the pass, they're 10th in quality possession rate. I think that's really, really interesting. And I wonder what Indiana's defense holds up to there, because Indiana has been pretty good at preventing those drives, 13th overall in echo rate allowed. I will kind of wonder what gives there, because Nebraska's problem has been more finishing those drives, see the Illinois game, than it has been, generating them. And Indiana, excuse me, not amazing at finishing those drives on defense. They're 3.78 points per quality possession there. So this is a situation where I think Indiana is legitimately good. Nebraska as an underdog has some juice.
Yes, it does. And I am on Nebraska plus 5.5. Big Huskers guy right now. And like you said, I'm very interested. We talk a lot about, oh man, let's see what happens when teams get inside the 30. How do they switch up play calling? How do they run their offense or run their defense closer to the goal line? I am so interested in what this football game looks like between the 40s because of what you just pointed out with that echo rate for both of these teams. I cannot wait to see if these teams go into some of their red zone offenses maybe a little bit closer to midfield to try and just get where they are in scoring position at all.
Yeah, and look at big disparity on field position for Indiana. They're 19th, starting at the 30. Some of that is definitely influenced by Maryland giving the ball away just generously, just out of the charity of their hearts. And Nebraska is 72nd in starting field position allowed. So short fields, again, my hot take, I've said it before on a podcast this week, it's easier to score when you're closer to the end zone. I think that might make some difference. If Nebraska makes a couple key mistakes, I wouldn't be surprised to come back and see that being the deciding factor. Indiana got a short field score, and that kind of flipped the game overall. Been fun to see Indiana. Jamie, I'll take a detour here, even though we try to keep this short. From a program building standpoint, if you're an athletic director, the list of acceptable excuses for not succeeding in year one is becoming minuscule.
Yes,
it is getting very, very thin. Kurt Signetti came into a program, took a MAC transfer at quarterback, and was like, "Yeah, we're going to be awesome, dude." I think the timeline for coaching might start to get way shorter. And as a side note, I wonder if we don't see coaching contracts start to change a little bit as revenue share comes in and we're spending and paying on these players, and we need more accountability from coaches for immediate results. We can't tie up millions and millions and millions of dollars just to have a big name. We need someone to come in and win games. Kurt Signetti, I think, is a great case study for the reversal of fortune and how teams are going to have to be sharp about allocation management in quick turnarounds.
It'll be interesting to see what school is able to break that seal when it comes to hiring practices for head coaches. Because if you're sitting there and you're a Vanderbilt or a Purdue or a Kansas, you're not going to be able to go and call a head coach and be like, all right, here's the deal, 2-year contract, right? Or 3-year contract, minimal buyout. It'll have to be an Ohio State that has to shift those waters, shift those winds, in order for something like that to change. Because you're right, we're about to see, I think, a huge wave of universities really being stuck behind big buyouts. There are a couple that may be coming in the Big 12. There are a couple that are always seemingly looming in the Big 10 and the SEC as well. And it'll be something really interesting to track, because you're right, it's getting a lot shorter with Kurt Cignetti. Also, Sonny Dykes, right, going to the college football playoff in year 1 at TCU. You saw what Lincoln Riley did in year 1 with USC, and obviously has regressed since that season was pretty successful. So a lot of examples out there of year 1 success followed by regression in years 2 and 3, which makes this contract model that you're talking about even more intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun stuff. We should. I'll have my secretary write this down. We should do some off-season stuff where we just chat about this, because this is fascinating to me.
Absolutely.
I just love the ideas of this. Let's hit let's hit 1 or 2 more games before we hit this 30 minutes here. I mean, there's a couple big ones we could talk about. Alabama and Tennessee, Georgia and Texas are very fun. I think I'm rolling with the favorites on both of those. Are there any kind of off the radar games that speak to you as potentially fun? I know that I'm on Baylor and Texas Tech, if that's one you want to hit.
We can talk about it. I'm on Texas Tech on this game, -6.5, because it's just, I just can't support Baylor from an emotional standpoint. All right, here we go. I'm gonna do it.
There it is. I'm gonna work on. I'm gonna think about this UI situation. Yeah, I think Baylor's had opportunities to pick themselves up off the mat, to use an earlier analogy, and has politely declined. It seems crazy to me. Like, all right, just nothing else except I told you that an offense has Jake Spavital, Sawyer Robinson, Richard Reese, Monterey Baldwin. You're like, okay, dude, we can absolutely cook. And it just looks like it's not connecting there. I don't know if there's, some offensive line issues. Absolutely. But they're 111th in EPA per rush. And that just screams that just seems antithetical to everything that they want to be. And they had an opportunity against BYU and just could not walk through a wide open door to steal that game at home, go to Iowa State and really don't put up much there. I think this is another issue. Some of the traditional betting guys will be a little bit worried about the weather. I think Texas Tech could win this 14-3. Like, it would just be fine if the wind and rain is rolling. I do think this is an emotional spot for Texas Tech. And, Joey McGuire and crew are always thinking about the hierarchy and the pecking order of the Big 12. And this is a good opportunity to kind of twist the knife on a rival who's struggling. And I think they're going to be amped up for this one.
Not just a rival in the Big 12, but the pecking order in the state of Texas, which Joey McGuire prides himself on being a Texas high school coach, being a part of that, that fraternity of coaches in the state that loves this sport so much, and also the place that he came from, his previous employer, where you and I both, I believe, on the record and have since maybe backtracked slightly on the concept of Joey McGuire's Baylor Bears, not Matt Rule's Baylor Bears. But nonetheless, a very big game for both of these schools for a variety of reasons. Tech's trying to stay on top of the conference, try to stay undefeated in Big 12 play. And the reality is the reason that I'm on Tech -6.5 is because they have Taj Brooks and Baylor doesn't. Right. And at the end of the day, when you're talking about a weather game, that's really the big differentiator there for me.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, if it's wind and rain, that's fine. We're just going to line up and hand it to Taj 50 times, and he's going to run and do his thing. Absolute volume there for Baylor. Cool. All right, why don't you close this out? You pick a game. I asked you, and I told you where to go.
You're good. You're good. You know which game I want to go to? We're going to go here, and we're going to talk about Garrett Nussmeier, because I owe Garrett Nussmeier a little bit of an apology after my comments last week saying that I didn't believe in him, that I thought he would choke in big moments, and then he went out and he did all of the right things, made all of the right decisions in a big game against Ole Miss to get them to overtime to win that football game. Shout out to Garrett Nussmeier. I also did something pretty ridiculous earlier this week when these lines came out, and Arkansas was a 3.5 point underdog, and I took the Razorbacks. I don't know if they're going to be able to do to LSU what they did to Tennessee, because I like LSU's offense far more than I like Tennessee's offense, but we'll see. Rivalry game, anything can happen. We'll see.
I don't hate it. I don't hate the logic. And Jamie, I feel the need to clear the air on a take of mine. It's a tight needle to thread. I think the funniest bits are bits that people don't know if they're bits. And both, at times you and Grant both texted me and said, wait, are we really on Joe Milton? And I need to clear the air there just to say, I'm not doing a bit with Garrett Nussmeier. I think he might be the first quarterback off the board in the draft this year, just because it's a relatively weak class. And the dude has undeniable juice. He has undeniable flaws, absolutely. But I think he's got some skill sets that NFL GMs are absolutely going to love. We saw him in a big moment, obviously very favorable to have the entire state of Louisiana in that stadium yelling and screaming for you in support, and Ole Miss coming unglued. But I think that the issue with kind of Arkansas's defense here is that there isn't really a known strategy to obviously detract from LSU's offense. It's not as simple as, hey, if you can do this one thing well, you can really screw with the numbers and really throw off what they're trying to do, which is what Arkansas did. It's funny enough to see these coaches, Jamie, talk about, well, they're running a light box and getting us to run, but then they're still stopping it. Like, no one has watched Big 12 football over the last 15 years at all. We've seen this happening. Everything is cyclical, and we're seeing this stuff trickle upwards as these Big 12 offensive and defensive comments concepts kind of trickle up. Shout out to Gary Patterson and Dave Aranda and Matt Campbell for kind of getting recipes for how to deal with these high-flying offenses that no one could stop. I mean, Jamie, we are a long way from the days of Mike Gundy saying, I don't know what anyone would do to stop our offense, and then getting stopped. These are known knowns in the Big 12, and we're even seeing in the Big 12 some run-heavy counter punches, some 12 personnel to the light boxes, where the Big 12 actually taking another step in the evolution of offense. They're saying, okay, we're going to, you're going to drop the safety down and try to prevent smash mouth. We're going to run 12 personnel and play two-man game and just run over you. Arizona State having some great success. So I don't know if Arkansas can do the defensive trickery that they did against LSU here. I like home underdog in a rivalry game. I think that's great. I think that is a very Pittman situation to be on, and I agree with it. I'm actually on LSU though, just because I think the offensive ceiling is there, and I don't know that Arkansas can do the defensive disruption they did again. So that might be the first one this entire season where we've outright disagreed. But I think we're on opposite sides, as much as the 8-year-old Arkansas fan inside of me wishes that it were different.
Yeah, I let my childhood woo pig get the better of me when this line came out. That's for sure. And I will say this, a bold claim, Parker. Maybe we can talk about it in the offseason. I think the Big 12 has the deepest pack of running backs in the country.
Offhand, hard to argue there's not a lot of guys. I wonder, we should add this to our list of just let's talk ball, because there are a ton of running backs who are good in this class. I wonder what we're going to think about them in 3 years after the draft shakes out and a couple of NFL careers, because this is truly the last COVID year. Like, everything is basically normal after this year, with some obvious, Cam McCormick and Cam Rising aside. And these running backs staying for an extra year at this critical mass is really interesting, because it kind of one signals, hey, maybe they weren't, super jazzed about their NFL chances, but also you can make money in college as a running back that you can't make in the NFL. And so that's just a really interesting kind of interplay. But yeah, Big 12 is pretty stacked with running backs.
It is. All right. I think we're well over the 30-minute mark, we should probably wrap.
That's good. That's a good call. I lost it. Could talk about Big 12 running backs for forever here. This has been CFB Graph's Quick Hits Week 8 version. I'm Parker Fleming. You can find me on Stats4 on Twitter and on BetStamp, just tracking those paper trades. Jamie Plunkett is Frog Preacher. You can find him on the same places as well. Jamie, enjoy the games. We're going to see each other in person at the Utah game this weekend. Going to be a lot of fun. No idea what we're going to get into there, but should be a lot of fun. I'll see you in a day at this point.
Yeah, man. Shenanigans, wings, and maybe a beer or two. Looking forward to it.
Absolutely love it.